Hello, hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me
Yes,
now?
I can hear you. Hey,
Let me turn this up. Make sure I can hear you well.
you're perfect. Not a problem. Hey, did you see the email I just popped out to you guys?
Just a second. Let me see. Can you
There,
say
can you
something
hear
now?
me okay?
It's really quiet. Let me see
Okay,
if it's
can you hear me?
super quiet. Turn my volume up all the way.
Oh, hang
You
on,
try
let me
turning
just,
yours some?
can you hear me okay?
I can hear like in the background, but it's really. Let me see. Try
Got it.
saying now, Sam.
Can you hear me okay?
Okay, so it is
Testing,
on my
testing, testing.
headphones, but it's just super quiet. I don't know why
Okay.
that would be.
I can hear you fine. So you're coming in very good.
Interesting. Maybe I can do something on the computer. Computer volume's off.
Kind of set up. We've got a couple students that are in already. Congratulations, Greg. Congratulations, even, for being here. I'm going to go ahead and go into a share mode now so that we can share the screen. You guys should be able to see. Actually, let me change. Nope. You guys should be able to see the Canvas module right now. Can everybody see the Canvas module?
Yes, we can.
Good. There you go. So we'll start with that just to make sure that there aren't any questions for getting week 6 kicked off, and then I've got our PowerPoint lined up that we'll jump into, and then we'll go ahead and start to go through that. I'll do a quick introduction to kind of give everybody a heads up as to my connection with Greg and to Even, and then I will turn it over to them. I'll run the slides for them. Any of the mess ups, you guys can blame me. Since if things don't work right, it's my issue, not yours. Hello, Farah.
Hello, how are you?
Good evening. And then,
Hello.
hello, Nathan.
Hey, Professor, how's it going?
Good, and you?
Yeah, holding it together.
Good, good, good. Felipe's in. Hello, Felipe.
Hey, Professor.
Good evening. We've got a variety of fun things we're going to do tonight. Hello, Eric.
Hello, how's it going?
How's everything going?
Good, really good.
Where are you dialing in from?
Indonesia still?
Okay.
Yeah.
How's that?
Actually,
Looks
we're
like
on our way back today.
you're adapting to the humidity.
Yeah, a little bit. So I actually might cut out of this meeting early just because we have to catch up with
I
back a little bit. So.
understand. Hello, Jose.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon. Hello, Benjamin.
Hello, Professor. Good afternoon.
We've got our two guest speakers that are online, so you'll see them, Greg Williams and Even. And the last name.
LeVar.
Much better than I was going to do. Hello, Zoe.
Hello, Professor. How are you?
Excellent. How's everybody doing tonight? Everybody okay?
Doing well.
Good.
Last stretch.
You guys are coming down the home stretch. That's right. It's going to look like there's a bow wave of work towards the end, but it once you're over the bow wave, it's going to level off really quickly. So you'll be good. Hello, Arun.
Hello, Professor.
Hello, Cesar.
Hello.
Hello, Gallo.
Hello, Professor.
Good to see you. We got Daniel's in. Hello, Daniel.
Hey, good afternoon, Professor.
Good afternoon. Hello, Christy.
Hi, Professor. How are you?
Good. Just a heads up for everybody, all of your questions that came in, I've gone ahead and forwarded off to Greg and to Even. They're going to integrate some of the answers probably in the material that they'll be covering, or the one thing I would want to encourage you is that if you have a question as we're going through the material, raise your hand, we'll get you in, you can ask the question at that point. They definitely want to make it an interactive presentation, so both of them have expressed their interest in wanting to make sure if you've got questions, go ahead and raise your hand, let us know so that we can get that for you. The other thing I want to give you a heads up is that we could have an entire course on Agile and Lean, and it would take 6 to 8 weeks. We're giving you an introduction tonight, so buckle up your seatbelts. Hang on, we're going to give you as much as we can. It's going to feel like a fire hose probably at a certain point, but we want to make sure that if there's anything you need clarification on, let us know. Also, Greg and Even can be contacted outside of here. So both of them have offered up if you've got additional questions, if there's anything that we can offer you as additional resources, to let us know, because this is their background and both of them are really versed in this. Before we get started, just a quick question for you. The week 6 module, we're done with week 5, moving into week 6. Next Tuesday night will be the final presentation for your teams. Other than that, the peer reviews can be filled out anytime you want during the week. The final report isn't due until the last night. The final presentation, if you can get it to me a day early, that's great. If worse comes to worse, 6 hours prior to presentation, I can still work with that. So if you're still making final tweaks at the end, I understand. My guidance would be practice, practice, practice. I've given you kind of a list of 5 to 7 questions that I might be asking depending on the number of people in the team. So you have an anticipation of what it would look like as me as a member of the ECS PMO to kind of ask each of you a question. And the process would be, we'll start with team A, then go to team B, C, D, and we'll go that way. Unless somebody has an issue where they need as a team to go first or something like that, let me know. We could potentially work it out of order if that works better for one of the teams. So any questions with the final week that we've got ahead of us in week 6? If you do, go ahead and jump in here.
Hey, Professor, it's Felipe. I do have a question.
Mm-hmm.
In regards to the final report, the format you have on the template doesn't seem to line up directly with what you have on the rubrics. Just wanted to make sure clarity, just follow up on the rubrics, correct?
Yes. Go to the rubric. Any of the templates we provide are just suggested start and not necessarily, I'll call it, you don't have to use that. You could start from scratch if you wanted, and if you feel that there's something more appropriate for you. The one caution I would have also is the same thing on the presentation. 20 minutes, 20 slides. I can tell you that in the number of times I've done presentations, I've always looked at 5 lines, 5 words each, takes about 2 minutes to get through a slide as a typical, just a grounding. So if you've got 20 slides and there's a 20-minute cap, that means you're trying to cover all the material on a slide in, a minute. Just be careful. So there is a cap on the time. We want to try to hold it as close to that 20-minute window as possible. If you go under, there's no issue. If you go over a little bit, there's no issue. But if you're at the 30-minute mark, there'll be some level of deduction. Okay?
Thank you.
Sounds good. And if you've got any other questions, feel free to jump in during the week and let me know what's going on. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and pull the presentation up. I want to make sure everybody can see that. And then let me swap this around. Can everybody see the presentation at this point?
Yes, Professor.
Got it. And let me introduce the 2 guest lecturers. I'll start with Greg. Greg and I have known each other since 1995. I've collaborated with him on a variety of different things. We actually ran a skunkworks kind of workshop out of the Boeing Advanced Products side of Rocketdyne for about 3 or 4 years, and his organization would supply me team members to come in and work with my high technology team members, and we integrated two entirely different cultures together into something that was pretty awesome to watch as the teams would come up with new ideas, innovations, and be able to kind of pitch that out after a 2.5-day format. In addition to that, I've co-authored at least one paper. Greg has probably mentored me through 4 or 5 different developments of different publications I've put together, whether that's educational course material or professional course material. And I use him as a sounding board on a regular basis. I get real hyperactive and start talking real fast, and he's able to kind of just tone me down and so give me the, can you explain that just a little slower for me? I could handle it. And he's just been a great friend. Even is a new collaboration person that I've started working with because of Greg. So Greg has introduced me to him, and I know that we've got future endeavors we're going to do in addition to what we're doing tonight. So he's got a great personality, and if you take a look at his background, it's just an awesome, his strengths are just amazing. He will probably also be one of those people, for those of you that want to look at certifications that fall out of different areas, he can give you lots of information associated with that. Okay, so with that, I'm gonna go ahead and jump into Greg. And Greg, I'm gonna give you a chance to pitch your slide.
Okay. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to speak to the students tonight. I always enjoy talking about this topic. I enjoy talking about leadership. I enjoy talking about lean. I enjoy talking about really everything around getting better at what we do, whether it's as people or whether it's as an organization. And so that's what we're going to be kind of focusing on tonight, specifically with regards to Agile. But I retired from Era Energy in December 2016. I was a lean director there and led the lean implementation at Era. We were the first oil company to implement lean, and that goes way back to about 1990. And so it's been a great journey, and I look forward to talking more about that this evening. So when I retired from Era, I started my own consulting business. So I'm the president of Western Sensei Consulting, and I do a number of things. I do executive coaching. I work with CEOs, presidents, executive vice presidents, just helping them to understand how to develop a culture that supports people-centric leadership, that supports lean, and just a whole culture of continuous improvement. It's so critical that the senior leaders are on board, and that we've got the senior executives, behind it. And so I coach them one-on-one. We go to the Gemba together. We go out to the workforce and talk with people, and we meet with leadership teams and really build the right kind of culture that will lead to long-term sustainability and success. And so I've been in the workforce for about 40 years, a little bit more than that. I do have a Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt, and just a lot of experience in different industries and different organizations, implementing lean, implementing continuous improvement, and also implementing something I'm passionate about, the whole concept of people-centric leadership. So I'll leave it at that for now.
And I would throw 2 other things out there. You're a member of AME. You might want to just spend a moment to pitch AME. And then the other thing would be that you introduced me into people-centric leadership, even though we were working in something very similar to it previous to that. So you gave me Bob Chapman as a reference, and they were exposed in MSE 608B to people-centric leadership. And the Bob Chapman book was part of their curriculum.
Great. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Dale. Yeah. So AME is Association for Manufacturing Excellence, and I've been involved with AME for about 19 years, and I've done just about everything you can do within that organization. It's a nonprofit volunteer organization that focuses on helping organizations, specifically manufacturing organizations, but we also work with healthcare and military and service industries, but really focused on manufacturing. But we help them to be more successful. We help them to implement lean, implement people-centric leadership, and improve their processes. So we want, we're working on a manufacturing renaissance for North America, specifically mainly the US and Canada, but really trying to reinvigorate the whole manufacturing industry. And we've made a lot of headway in doing that. So I've been with them for about 19 years, and I 2 years ago was the chairman of the board. And so I'm off of the board now, but I'm still very active in the organization. And if any of you are interested in becoming part, in learning more about the organization, just send me a note. I'd love to tell you more about it. But it's, again, a nonprofit really focused on improving manufacturing and also people-centric leadership and coupling those two together. And yeah, Bob, I'm great. I'm glad that you all have been introduced to Bob Chapman, the president and CEO of Barry Waymiller. He's a very good friend of mine, and he's one of the CEOs that I'm working with to enable this this manufacturing renaissance. And there's a number of others as well that are really really exciting guys to work and gals to work with. So thank you, Dale.
You got it. Let's go ahead and get Evan's information up here.
All right. Well, thank you all for this amazing opportunity. I really appreciate it. I'm very excited and honored to be here with all of you guys. And just a few words about me. I recently started the Coach Agile organization, so I see a big opportunity for growth there, and what's going on in the US, especially with organizations. So we share a lot of passions between Greg and Dale around servant leadership, people-centric leadership, and with what's going on in a lot of organizations with command and control kind of mindset that's been driven over the years. I think there's big opportunity in this space. So I've been Agile certified coach, Agile certified practitioner from PMI. I've been in this Agile space for 5 years or so. I have over 7 years of work experience, worked in both operations side of businesses, process engineer, and project manager, project engineer on capital side of business. So I've seen both ends. Got a Lean Six Sigma Green Belt certification, became licensed mechanical engineer, PE, a master's in mechanical engineering as well. Recently got an MBA. So still working full-time as well in oil and gas industry, and kind of on the side doing the coaching and training through Coach Agile.
Got it. The other thing I would kind of throw out there is, if you get a chance, go to the coachagile.LLC website. It is, if you're looking at trying to put together a website, both Greg and I are in awe as to how excellent that came out and the resources that are available there. Because I know that you have co-authored a paper with somebody from the University of Bakersfield. So give a pitch out to that, and there's just a lot of other stuff you're doing with the community. So we're really happy to.
Thank you. Yeah. So this is the link. Since you'll have this presentation, this is the link to the website, Coach Agile. It's hyperlink, and yeah, the paper is on the website as well. You can find it there, a link to it, and I'll be happy to send you a free copy if you reach out to me, an email.
Sounds good. This is just kind of a quick roadmap as to where we've gone in our, I'll call it our course journey up to this point. So you can see we're down to the final area. We're closing the project, and then we would look at Agile and then potentially international projects. So this is just to kind of align everything for everyone to see where we are in our textbook as to how we got here. The book learning objectives, I'm going to go ahead and let you can cover those if you would like, Even.
Yeah, sure. I'll get us started. So this slide shows what book thinks would be useful and valuable for you guys to know. So I wanted to separate those two, since we did receive some specific inquiries from students. What are the areas of interest? So from the books on the authors, book authors' perspective, they think it would be good to recognize the conditions in which traditional project management versus agile project management should be used, understand the value of incremental iterative development for creating new products and services, and to identify core agile values and principles to understand the basics of Scrum methodology and to recognize the challenges with Agile project management, which we'll cover and incorporate definitely throughout the presentation. So here's two examples out of many. We received a lot of questions and inquiries. As Dale mentioned, we won't have time to necessarily cover every single one, but as was mentioned, please feel free to reach out to us, email us, and we'll be able to follow up and get more in depth on some of the questions. But I specifically chose this format because it's the format of an example of a user story, which we'll learn what user story is throughout the presentation. But as a project manager or product owner, I need to quickly and visually see the status of my projects so that I can proactively act, if needed, to adjust the scope, which is product backlog in the Agile world, Scrum world, and deliver maximum value to our customers within the budget and on time. Another example, as an engineering management certificate program student, I would like to know what Scrum is and how it is used so that I can evaluate if I could use it in my company. So before we get into the Agile itself and Agile project management, we need to understand the purpose of the project. Why are we doing it? So what is the gap or opportunity that we're looking to close with the project? And overall, how does it fit in a big picture in the overall business, overall organization, so that we all understand how does it add value, so we have a strong purpose, behind it. And I would like to demonstrate that to give you a snapshot through business model canvas video, because I believe it's very strong in connecting visually and demonstrating a business model in just a couple of minutes, and then I can elaborate a little bit on it. Can everybody hear the volume from the video okay?
I can't hear anything personally.
I can't have time hearing it myself.
Here, hang on. Let me see if I can. It's not muted. I'm going to go ahead and turn my. Let me do this. I'm going to make an adjustment on my side if everybody just hang with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to run it through my speakers.
Hey, Professor, what's the charge code while we're waiting?
The key resources required to create value, partners, and the cost structure of the business model. But it's not sufficient to just enumerate the 9 building blocks. What you really want to do is to map them out on a pre-structured canvas.
I can't see the video. Are you sharing screen, Dale?
This is what we call the business model canvas, a tool that helps you map, discuss, design, and invent new business models. Let's briefly go through the 9 building blocks, starting with the customer segments.
I can't see the screen. Are you sharing your screen, Dale?
This includes simple users and paying customers.
He took his headset off.
Yeah, so he can't hear you.
Value proposition. These are the bundles of products and services that create value for your customers. The channels describe through which touch points you're interacting with customers and delivering value. Customer relationships outline the type of relationship you're establishing with your customers. The revenue streams make clear how and through which pricing mechanisms your business model is capturing value. Then you need to describe the infrastructure to create, deliver, and capture value. The key resources show which assets are indispensable in your business model. The key activities show which things you really need to be able to perform well. The key partners show who can help you leverage your business.
Hey, Professor.
Since you won't own all key resources yourself, nor you perform all key activities, then once you understand your business model's infrastructure, you'll also have an idea of its cost structure. So with the business model canvas, you can map out your entire business.
Professor, can you hear us at all?
Wait till the end of the video if you can't hear it.
Just as well as for the
Yeah.
senior
It's
executives.
not like 2 minutes, so it looks like it's done. Yeah.
Dale, can you hear us?
Okay, hang on. Let me get back into the presentation now. Looks like we have to jump out every time we.
So Dale, we could hear it through your speakers, but we could not see the video.
No way, really? So, sorry about that. Do you want to go back one more time?
Warn you.
Go ahead. I couldn't hear whoever was speaking.
That was Caesar, and he was saying we tried to warn you that we couldn't see the video with your headphones off.
Sorry about that. Yeah, that's true. I've got my headphones off, so that let's try to go back and.
If we can't do it due to technical difficulties, maybe we just pause the video at the very end where you can see the whole complete business model canvas, and I can, in a minute, kind of explain it. We can move forward.
Got it. Let me see if I can get that up.
And
I'll get it to a format for you. Okay, now let me see if I can share. Okay. Can everybody see the business canvas model? It's the...
Yes, we can. So
good.
This is, for everyone, a live example of what agility is and what agile mindset is. So we're going to adjust here on the fly and achieve our objective to demonstrate this to you and knowledge, even though we run into difficulties, which is what happens in real projects as well. So this is, live scenario. But we all get to learn from this scenario here. So business model canvas starts with the value proposition in the center. So in your business model, whatever organization you're working in, I know this engineering management program, and they'll share with us, we have folks from a variety of industries at different levels in organizations. So I'll try to make this as applicable to you as possible. But we start with value proposition. What is the value we're providing to our customers, and who are our customers? That's customer segment to the right-hand side with our products or services, whatever you're offering. Channels in between them are ways we reach our customers. And so you can watch this video afterwards for yourself. It'll make a little more sense because it visually connects all the building blocks of a business model canvas, but I'll do my best to demonstrate it here. So through channels is how we reach our customers, customer relationships, how do we maintain the relationship with our, something happened with, I lost the Zoom. Am I still on?
You're still on.
Oh, okay. Some update popped up for me. Sorry about that.
No worries.
And then all that is going to bring some revenue streams to the organization. So that's kind of the right-hand side of the canvas that you do based on the value you provide is going to be associated with the revenue streams coming in. But what's needed to support this business model are things on the left side with the cost structure. So to deliver all those services and products, it's going to have a cost structure and what's as a foundation, and that consists of some of the key activities in the organization that you do, because you can't do everything yourself. You want to focus on your core competencies and strengths, and then partner with others to complement your skills to deliver value. And you have some key resources, they're part of that. So when it comes to projects, we could have gaps and opportunities in all these areas or some of those areas. So we do a project to close that gap or take advantage of the opportunities that we have. To improve our business, to add value to our business. So that's I wanted to just kind of show you to help understand the purpose why we do project. We don't do projects just to do projects. There's got to be a strong business need for them. Is there anything else, Greg, you would like to add?
Well, I wanted to open it up to the group here and see if anyone had any questions on this structure, on this model.
Yeah, and
Sure.
let me just throw this out there. I think Gus had you guys put together a. I think you guys used the business model canvas in the previous course, didn't you? Hello.
I think these items sound familiar, but I don't think we ever assembled in a table like this. So it looks just enough familiar that I wouldn't say yes off the top of my head.
Got it. Okay, and that could be correct. He may have used a different format. This is the format that is typically out there right now. There's a customization of it also that's been done from a lean perspective. So there's also a lean business model canvas in addition to the standard business model canvas. But many times, as you're putting together a business, this is the way to pitch it. Go ahead, Greg.
And I would just add that, you know, this works really well for projects, but it's also very helpful to think very holistically about your strategy. You know, when you're putting together a company strategy, an organizational strategy, you really want to think about all of these areas. This is a very holistic approach to whether it's a project or a strategy or a business model. And this could be at a department level or a company level. It's gonna manifest itself differently at the different levels, but it's still all of the same elements that you want to be thinking about. So you're going to see as we go through this evening, you know, we'll touch on a lot of these areas here. But I would just encourage you to think about if you're working on a business strategy, or if you're working on a plan for your department or your part of the business. Use something like this, a model like this, to make sure you're taking a very holistic approach to it, and you're thinking about all of these things. It also helps with innovation, so it's very useful at a high level to just think about all of these elements. So I encourage you to get familiar with this and practice with it and play with it a little bit.
Yeah, Christy, I know you were looking for dashboards. This is a great dashboard as a single view where you can kind of, you know, deep dive into certain areas if you need to. So this would be one of those tools that I would recommend you pick up and run with as something for yourself.
Okay, thank you, Professor.
And Christy, with respect to a dashboard, you will see another video a little bit later this evening from a company, Cambridge Engineering, and you'll see their dashboards as well. And so even after the program, you know, offline, if you want any more information, I'd be happy to help with that.
Sounds great. Thank you.
And same here, of course. So yeah, instead of, this is actually one of the agile tools, if you will, could be considered, because it embodies a lot of agile values and principles, where we don't spend a year or two putting a comprehensive business plan that's 100, 200 pages just to find out that, you know, nobody's going to buy this product or something like that. But this allows us to quickly put something together, put it to test, get feedback from customers, and pivot and adjust and iterate until we find the right solution that works best. So I think we can move on to our next slide, Dale.
Got it. And can you see the PowerPoint at this point?
Not yet.
Okay. Let me stop share and we'll go share. We'll want to go to here. How about now?
Yes.
There we go. We're back.
Perfect.
Awesome. Thank you. So now as we look at, to give you a high level compare and contrast, as most of you are familiar with traditional approach, or waterfall, some people call it, to managing new projects. Here's in a few words to compare. We'll have some visual as well later. But with traditional, we concentrate on upfront thorough planning up in detail. And it's split in phases. It's called also phase gate. Requires a high degree of predictability to be effective. So as we try to plan every task, how long is it going to take, who is going to do it, you know, how much is going to cost. So it does require a lot of predictability, meaning we know what the outcome is going to look like at the beginning of the project. So that's where traditionally is pretty effective. Another one is it does lock down design early in the project life cycle, so it doesn't allow a lot of flexibility. And some of these things might be required depending on what environment you're in. If you're in regulated industry, for example, things that have really long turnaround periods, that's kind of the space where predictive or traditional waterfall works pretty well. When it comes to Agile, it's quite different. It relies on incremental, iterative development cycles to complete projects. It thrives in complex and unpredictable type of environment where being R&D, innovation type of space, engineering and design that's mixed between art and science to get a project to be issued for construction in the case of facilities, for example. So that's where the space where it thrives. Technology as well. Agile came from software development really, and it's now starting to develop to other industries. IT sector realized that too many projects were way years behind schedule and millions of dollars over budget. And there's got to be a better, different way to manage that kind of complex, highly cross-functional, interdisciplinary work. And Agile has been making huge improvements in their project success rates. And it focuses on active collaboration between project team and customer representatives. And Greg, anytime you want to jump in, please feel free, chime in to add stuff.
Okay, will do.
I'll go ahead and.
Did we skip the slide? Sorry. Okay, we're good.
Do you want me to try to play the Agile PM video?
I don't know if it's going to work. If you think we can make it work, we could try. Do you want to give it another try, or
let's see what happens, and I'll try to turn the volume up so that.
This is the one that has a little commercial.
No video.
There's no video.
There's no video?
Just the sound coming through.
Okay, hang on. Let me try to.
Yeah, I think you have to click on it
Yep.
when you share screen.
And share. Can you see the video now?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, let's try this then.
Expand it full screen, please.
So there's a lot of things happening right now that are causing challenges.
That was it.
Got it.
Yeah.
Let me jump back out, and we're gonna jump to the PowerPoint. Can you guys see the? No, you can't. Hang with me.
Sorry, we keep jumping back and forth with you here.
No, it's all good. I just need to share the right view. Hang on. Just need to swap that around, and we should be there.
There we go. So as you saw in this video, Agile project management is related to rolling wave planning and scheduling project methodology. So we plan at a very high level, the longer term stuff, and break things in detail that are short term, if you will. So iteration is a time box, 1 to 4 weeks typically, and we develop very detailed tasks for the work that's going to be happening in that iteration. And we have to have workable product to satisfy customer, because at the end we'll have a sprint review to provide to share what we've completed to our customers and get feedback from them.
Just a couple of comments on this slide here. A couple of things that really stand out for me here is, one is the customer focus, and you can see it showing up a couple of places there. But it really, Agile is focused on meeting the customer's needs, and so as you're going through the process from the beginning of the project and working through it all the way to the end, you're constantly comparing against what your customer requirements are and making sure that you're meeting and satisfying your customers. The other part that really stands out for me here is the learning that happens. It's a cyclical process, so in each cycle you're learning, and this gives you the opportunity to apply that learning and take advantage of that as you go into the next iteration or the next cycle. Whereas sometimes with your traditional project management, once you lock in your design early and it's frozen, as you're learning going forward, you're not going to be able to apply those learnings to this specific project. Hopefully you apply them to the next project, but you're going to lose those learnings with this particular project. So that's one of the major advantages with Agile, is that you're learning as you go, and then you're applying those learnings. So and hopefully capturing and reusing that knowledge as well. So it's a benefit that Agile provides that often you miss with your traditional project management.
Most definitely. Thank you, Greg.
I'm going to throw a question out there. In a traditional project, typically we have to have all the scope identified up front. And once we lock that scope down, we baseline and then start to measure against that. In Agile, I've heard, and I'm just, let me know, that there's a more flexible methodology to scope. You don't necessarily have to fully develop it, and that the team can kind of determine as they're moving along what that scope is required to be. Is that true?
Yes, that is correct. So scope is flexible. However, budget and schedule is fixed. So as you think back to your triangle that most people are familiar in traditional, the reason that is scope is flexible is because we have an idea what the end product is going to look like, and we have idea what it's going to be most valuable to the customers, but we don't really know until we start developing the product. And so as we go through the iterations in Agile, we get that feedback and we adjust the scope. As customers start seeing our product evolving over time, they can point us to the direction. Yes, we like this. No, we don't like it. Oh, this would be valuable. Ooh, don't do that because we're not going to use that. An example that comes to my mind that I frequently use is Excel. Can you imagine how much energy, money, time Microsoft has spent to build out and develop very comprehensive functionality inside Excel? And on average, how many of those functions do we use, average Excel user? So from a lean world, there's a lot of overlap between lean and Agile. You probably heard 80-20 rule. So that's kind of what Agile keeps in mind, constantly trying to prioritize the scope, understanding, hey, what's the most valuable next feature, functionality, scope that we were doing that will add most value to customer, such that if we're running out of time or money, then we can say, okay, we'll deliver 80% of the value to our customer, and that is most of the time good enough. So that's, hopefully that explains it. Is that good?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay. So this chart, we look at the project uncertainty. Predictable space at the bottom left, you can see is trying to demonstrate how defined is our scope and how much do we know about the project and what kind of technology, how are we going to execute. So if we're in a predictable range, at the bottom left, traditional is probably a better approach to tackle that project. If we're outside of predictable or even on the border, agile is usually a better way to go to handle that project.
And just to give an example, I just finished working with a company up in Canada, and with that company, they were working on a research and development project that literally, if it pans out, will change the industry that they're in. And so it's a very exciting project. And they were using traditional project management at first, just because that's all they really knew. And it's very siloed, and so you didn't have good multidisciplinary, cross-functional collaboration going on. You had different disciplines working in their own silos, and the project was way behind schedule, way over budget. And so I started working with them, and we brought in an agile approach to working on that specific R&D project, because it was very much unknown. They're developing brand new technology, and started this, the very interactive, collaborative, multidisciplinary, cross-functional weekly discussions. And it's just amazing, how much the knowledge acquisition and the as far as advancing that technology, how much that went at such a much more rapid pace, because we were using this methodology now. In the traditional role, it would have been, it would have taken forever, to actually get through that R&D project. So that's an example of one where we were dealing with a lot of unknowns, dealing with a lot of brand new technology. It wasn't a known and stable process. It was building a lot of new knowledge, and the agile process was invaluable in that.
Definitely. So it does require a different mindset from the people involved with it, and definitely to be open mind and growth mindset. Okay. Thank you, Greg, for that. Sure. Okay, so this shows you a typical in the software development space, but it's relatively similar in other traditional waterfall projects, where we begin with the concept phase. Then that's thrown over the fence, typically to a different group of people or department, where requirements are gathered quite in detail, in depth, and this could take months, for example, or even up to a year, depending on the size, scale of the project we're talking about. Then that will be thrown over the fence, a lot of documents, requirements to design phase, where different group of people would be taking their interpretation, if you will, of that and designing the product, facility, whatever industry we're talking about. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of, what do you want to call it? Miscommunication, misunderstandings in those documents. There's a lot of opportunities for misunderstanding when the folks that are involved in previous phase are not involved in the latter phase. So as we work our way down, those effects we have a ripple effect. And by the time we get to construction phase, we might be seeing a lot of construction change orders, for example, because design group didn't involve anybody from the construction, and assumptions were made on how we could build this. And sometimes we find out, well, we can't build it like that, the way it's designed, we have to make adjustments. So it delays projects in construction, and if we're talking about the facility in this case, and definitely adds the cost to it. Then we have a test phase and deploy phase. So here's head-to-head comparison, traditional versus agile project manager, some of the key themes in each of them. So with traditional, we design upfront everything in detail and we lock it in. With agile, it's continuous collaboration and design effort from cross-functional group of people with frequent customer input and feedback. So traditional by design has a fixed scope, and agile is flexible, as we discussed earlier. we have deliverables in traditional versus features or requirements in agile. And traditional thrives in low uncertainty kind of environment, or predictable. It's the same thing. Agile is better in high uncertainty type of environment. Traditional tries to avoid change, so there's kind of adverse relationship, or if you will, between the project manager being on the capital side of a business and operations being a customer of a project, where we want to avoid change orders and scope changes by all means. And so it drives a different kind of relationship where it's, more of a, I don't know what's the right word to say, but it doesn't drive effective collaboration in that kind of environment, where we embrace change with agile, and we understand that our customers might not know exactly what they want and how they want at the very beginning of a project. We approach it with that mindset, and we collaborate closely throughout the engineering and design to come up to the best possible drawing package that's issued for construction.
Before we move on, I'm just wondering if there's any questions or comments, especially for maybe someone who hasn't spoken up yet. Is there anything on your mind that you want to ask about, or any comments based on what you've heard so far?
Yes, please.
Yeah, this is Cesar. I was wondering if the agile project management style, it's more expensive than a traditional project management style, because you're going back and forth in making changes to design, and that costs time and effort from a lot of people. Or how is the contract made or different from a traditional project management?
So when we're talking about engineering and design space here, so we got to look at the overall picture and total cost of ownership, if you will, of the project that we're doing. So it might be a little bit of additional cost up front, but we save big dollars downstream throughout the project, because a minor change in the engineering design is, let's say, could cost us $100, where that same change in the construction down the road could cost us $1,000. So it's a huge impact that it's kind of the example I can think of. So yes, we might pay 1% or 2% more upfront, but we save huge exponentially down the road later in the project, where those changes will cost us much more. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it does.
Anything else?
Yeah, bro, eso se ve decir, in terms of, I usually see traditional. It's the first time that I see agile. How well, overall, percentage-wise, is accepted in the industry? I saw the video that is technology. This program is developed in the 70s. But it's official in 2001. Agile versus traditional in the industry, how balanced? 50-50, 60% traditional and 40% agile right now, or it's growing?
Yeah, it's growing exponentially outside software development. So it's pretty mature in software development, because that's where I initiated and started. Last couple of years, it's growing exponentially. So as you know, PMI officially recognized it as well because it's growth, and PMI Agile Certified Practitioner certification is fastest growing certification from PMI. So it's gaining a lot of traction, and it's gaining a lot of recognition, because for the uncertain, unpredictable type of environment, it's significantly improved project success rates. So there's more and more companies adopting it for that environment. And outside IT, I can't tell you honestly if 10% currently of companies in different industries that might be using it, but I know it's growing significantly.
Yeah, and I'm seeing it a lot more across different industries. And one other thing that I'm seeing is a trend towards different industries, really, and different companies within industries, really modifying it and adapting it. So they're following the principles and benefiting from the principles of Agile without necessarily implementing the Agile, process as it is in the books. So they're not necessarily going through and implementing it by the book, but they're adapting it to really make it work in their industry or with their particular departments, and taking advantage of those principles.
Exactly. The value, mindset, principles, there's a lot of overlap with lean and agile and design thinking and couple other, innovation type of lean startup and business model canvas areas. So mixing and matching the best of the worlds that's out there to be the most effective and efficient in organization and minimize waste.
Yeah, even within the Boeing environment at a specific facility, we would have certain areas that would run in agile and lean, and others that were working in a traditional environment. So we didn't, basically just say we were doing nothing but lean and agile, but we had pockets where it made sense to use that type of philosophy. So a lot of times you're going to find, exactly like Even and Greg have indicated, that there's a tailoring or a flavoring that's brought in, and they may not even call it lean, and they may not call it agile. It may be called continuous process improvement, along with, some other keywords, but you could be functioning in a very lean and agile type of methodology.
Yep, exactly.
And that would be my recommendation, is after this presentation, if you've got a couple things that you hear Even and Greg talk about that makes sense to try to bring into an organization to try to improve performance or improve your effectiveness and efficiency, that might be one of the ways to kind of couch it, is that we're going to start to work in this way without going full-blown lean or full-blown agile. But Greg, I know both of you all are fully immersed in that environment, so it's very natural for you to move from department to department or company to company with that.
Mm-hmm.
Greg, up in Canada, did they do something similar to that?
Well, initially they weren't doing. When you say to that, you're talking about adapting it to work in their environment. Is that specifically what you're asking about?
Right.
Yeah. So part of the organization took the principles and took advantage of the visual management and the higher frequency of updates and team meetings and project reviews, but they didn't necessarily implement Agile as a system. Whereas in the R&D area, where we had this major project that has tremendous potential, we were more formal about putting the Agile process in place, kind of by the book, if you will, and it's really tremendously successful. And so within that one company, it's a large company, but within that one company, there was examples where they implemented it by the book and examples where they took it and said, well, we like the visual management, we like the adaptability, we like the frequent reviews, and we like the flexibility of learning and changing as we go. And so they adapted that to work in their particular environment, and it saw great results both ways, whether it was implementing it by the book or whether it was adapting it to work for their particular team.
And same here, definitely echo that.
Got it. Any other questions?
Yes, I had a question. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes. So in regarding to the nature of the high uncertainty of the agile method, is there a different way of dealing with risks versus the traditional way? Are they billed as they come, or is there in a specific time when things are basically the risks are assessed? since this is a higher uncertainty in comparison to the traditional method?
So let me jump in first, and then you can follow even. But from my experience, typically the risks, there's initial risks that are identified up front, and then you prioritize those risks, and then you figure out where you're going to address those in the process, and you review those on a whether it's a daily or weekly process depending on your particular agile structure. But those risks are continually reviewed and prioritized, and fit in where it makes sense to address them. That's one way that that I've seen that done. And the other way is to have a kind of a separate process that, at least what I call is a risk burn down process, where you initially brainstorm the large, list of all the potential risks, and then you prioritize those, you categorize those, you create owners for each one of those, and then that owner is accountable for making sure that each risk is mitigated, or at least is evaluated, and they have to report out on a weekly basis. And so it's built into the weekly reviews or into the daily reviews, depending on your structure. And so those risks are identified up front, but then as you go through the process, as you go through the project, you're going to identify new risks. That's part of the learning that comes out of this process. Is you're always coming up with new risks, and then the team talks about those risks and evaluates them and determines which ones need to be addressed right now and which ones can be pushed into the next cycle. But so you have to deal with those initial risks that you know of through a prioritized fashion, and then you have to also deal with those ones that are coming up as you go through the different iterations. But they're constantly evaluated and they're constantly reassessed, and then they're assigned, and the team determines when it makes the most sense to put the resources to mitigate each one of the risks. I don't know, Even, you want to follow up on that?
Yeah, exactly. I agree with what Greg was saying. So in addition to that, Agile is really by design allows us to minimize the risk of a project, because the nature of it is very transparent. So all the stakeholders know at all times what's going on with the project. So they can intervene at any point of time and bring some risk to people's project team's attention. And through frequent feedback loops, we also don't move forward with any of the assumptions. We validate those assumptions on a frequent basis. And that also de-risks the project, which is not necessarily the case in traditional, because it might be 6 months before you get an input and feedback from a key customer or stakeholder, and then just find, oh, well, we need to go back and rework all the 6 months of work that we put in place because we didn't factor that in. So by the nature of how Agile operates with transparency and frequent feedback loops, they actually de-risk the project.
Thank you. That's exactly what I was looking for. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Even, is there more communication about risk on a daily basis as the team starts, as you're working in that environment? That was one of the things I had seen, was that the culture of open communication, open and honest communication about what's happening, and that almost that reassessment of what are the risks that we've currently got in front of us, could be a wall walk that's done every morning.
Yeah, like Greg said, it could be a risk log or register that a team maintains, or it could be part of a daily huddle where typically we ask 3 questions. What is it that I did yesterday? What am I going to work on tomorrow? We're in front of the Scrum board, either physical or digital. And the third question that each person that's on the project team addresses: do I have any constraints or roadblocks that anybody on the team can help me with or just be aware of? So that's a good time as well to bring any risks that somebody foresees or thinks of as part of the potential constraint team can run into.
And I think one of the benefits of the Agile process is that as you identify risks, whether it's the initial risks at the outset and scoping of the project, or whether it's risks that come up throughout the project, there is an accountability there. Those risks are assigned to somebody who's accountable to follow up on those. Whereas from my experience in traditional project management, you might create a risk register, but a lot of times those risks didn't have specific assignments and accountabilities associated with them. And so, people were aware of them, but there wasn't really anyone accountable to make sure those risks were being effectively analyzed and mitigated. So in Agile, you have a lot of accountability and you have frequent discussions and updates on those risks.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Thank you.
So this slide gives you more of a visual representation and comparison of the culture or the environment that you would see in a traditional environment, traditional corporate structure versus more of a agile, lean type of organization that has maybe a little bit different values and priorities, if you will, mostly from leadership perspective is what this is demonstrating. So traditional corporate structure is kind of focused on the profit, where in a people-centric environment, we're talking more being focused on the purpose and why does this business exist, what's its purpose, and what does it serve. Hierarchy, as you see on the left, it's typically how organizations are structured with different departments and different groups. So they're in their own silo a lot of times, and there's lack of cross-functional collaboration with other disciplines, and that's kind of the root cause with a lot of challenges in effectiveness of projects and efficiency of executing projects. Where in a more lean agile world, you see a lot of networks built inside organizations, cross-functional teams organized, they collaborate, share knowledge, and continuously improve and learn together. On the left side, we see more controlling, where bosses and managers aren't telling people underneath them what to do and how to do it, which is not very empowering, which you see on the right-hand side in a different environment. We see more people-centric leadership and setting sort of the vision for the team and letting them figure out how to get there using their own skills, unique strengths. Then we're moving from detailed upfront planning to more of experimentation, iteration, cross-functional collaboration, a lot of feedback loops built in that environment. And then moving also from privacy, where managers and bosses and organizations don't want to share all the information with people underneath them because maybe they think that gives them an advantage for whatever reason, where in agile lean world, people-centric world, it's all about transparency, sharing information, everything, because every single employee in the organization has brains that can contribute and add value to the organization to move it forward. So you can see there's quite a bit of contrast in traditional corporate structure in America, which still a majority of organizations are run that way, but I think more and more moving to the right-hand side gradually over time. So that gives you a sense. It's a different culture, different mindset to be able to execute and run agile projects. So definitely need a executive leadership support in order to even try and pilot this kind of approach on your projects, and then even more especially to spread it across the company. So,
and this picture really does a great job of articulating two very different cultures. And we want to go from the left to the right. And I mentioned that that I do a fair amount of executive coaching, and I'm working with CEOs. And one of the things that when I'm coaching them, it's really how to move from that culture that we see on the left to the culture that we see on the right. What is their role in doing that, and what kind of questions they need to ask, and how do they support the next level of leadership to really build this kind of a culture. It's powerful. If you can move from the left to the right on this picture here, it's unbelievable how just the change that will make in the organization.
Greg, can you give us an example of what the word experimentation? I know for a lot of us, we're thinking of like science fair projects and things like that when we use that word experimentation. Can you give us an example, kind of a real world example of an experimentation and what that would be different from a planned activity?
Sure. So let me a couple of different examples. When we think about experimentation in terms of this kind of a culture, it's we want people to use their talents, and we want people to be creative, and we want them to come up with ideas, for creative ideas for improving processes, for making things better. And so it doesn't have to be perfect. Let's try something and see what we can learn from it. And so it can be something that is more technology based, or maybe it's a big process improvement where we're really going to change a significant part of the process, but we might want to do it in smaller chunks so that we can try some different things and learn from it. And rather than doing it as one big project, let's break it into chunks and get creative and try different things along the way. Or it could be simple things, just how do you make your work better? How do you take the frustrations out of your work every day? What can I try to improve in my work today to eliminate some waste, to eliminate some frustration, to make my life a little easier today than it was yesterday at work? And so the whole idea of experimentation is just, how do we get people continually using their creativity to come up with new ideas and trying those ideas and seeing what they learn from them. If it doesn't work, that's perfectly fine. What did we learn? Okay, let's try something else. And so it's the whole mindset of, let's continually keep trying new things and learning from those new things, and little by little making things better, whether it's on big projects or whether it's on relatively minor things just that make the day go better.
Would that translate into a certain level of what I'll call process flexibility, where you're allowed to try to optimize a process by making, changes along the way to see how you could, find a way to do things?
Absolutely. And what's really important to do that is that you have to have leadership support. It has to be a low risk to try things and experiment and take risk, take responsible risk. And if you fail, that's okay. What did you learn? And it's leaders have to support that, though. People have to feel safe. So you have to create a safe environment for this culture to exist, where people really feel comfortable experimenting. If people experiment and then what they tried didn't work out and they get slammed for it, they're probably not going to try it again. They're going to be safe, and they're going to, low risk, but also few improvements. It's just, you're not going to have a culture where people are continually making things better because it's too risky, it's too dangerous. And so we need to create a safe environment for people to be able to experiment and try things.
Exactly. I couldn't have explained it any better. So excellent summary. Thank you, Greg. So on this slide, we just visually trying to see how the product evolves. So as we go through the iterations, those are the time boxes, 1 to 4 weeks, sprints in Scrum world, and we get to see and talk with our customers. They get to see the product, give us input and feedback, and the product evolves over time until we get to ultimately to customer acceptance of the end product. That's what this slide is trying to demonstrate. It's incremental and iterative framework. Okay.
One thing, just to comment on that slide there, you don't have to go back to it, but it just, it is incremental, but it doesn't really mention it on this slide. But one thing to keep in mind here is that with each iteration, we're gaining new knowledge, and we need to make sure we capture that knowledge. That's something that a lot of companies, even the ones that are trying to implement an agile methodology within their organization, they miss that piece. They don't do a good job of capturing the knowledge that comes out of each one of these iterations and be able to reuse that knowledge. And so that's something for you to think about as you think about how this might apply in your organization, is as we go through these iterations, how are we going to capture the knowledge in a way that we can reuse it in the future? So just want to really encourage you all to do that.
Exactly. And as we'll see later in the slides, there is a reflection piece at the end of the sprint between the team after they do a sprint review with customers. to understand how did we do as a team, what can we do to improve in the next sprint, next iteration, and what did we learn, what do we want to stop doing, what do we want to try, experiment in the next sprint to see how much improves our productivity and effectiveness. So we'll see a little bit of that and elaborate later in the slides. So what are some of the key advantages of Agile project management? It's useful in developing critical breakthrough technology or defining essential features. We do see continuous integration from various disciplines involved in the product development. We see continuous verification and validation of the evolving product. We also have continuous learning and improvement and transparency because all the boards are visual and visible at all times to all the stakeholders. We have frequent demonstration of progress to increase the likelihood that the end product will satisfy a customer's needs. So we don't move far with the assumptions, thinking that something is going to add value to the customers. We validate that and get their actual input, because it's really hard to put yourselves in somebody else's shoes. And I see that constantly with engineering and design space, where it's really hard for people to put themselves in construction workers' shoes or operators' shoes and see things from their perspective. So that feedback is really critical. And involving downstream customers and users of the information or products that we generate in the upfront engineering design has been phenomenal. I've seen huge success improvements in projects as I've started doing that. We have early detection of defects and problems. Somebody asked that question earlier, and so a lot of times we pass these defects and problems down to construction or even the customers, and that costs us, with recalls, significant amount of money, and making changes when we have physical products that are built and they could be large. So that's significant amounts of dollars in schedule delays, reputation impact to the company that's kind of hard to measure and quantify in dollars. But all this stuff, there's much higher likelihood we would prevent through leveraging agile frameworks in our projects in this environment. And found designers locked down later in the project lifecycle take advantage of the new knowledge as it develops throughout the engineering and design. Anything else to add here, Greg?
Nope. I think we're ready to move on.
Okay. So here we come to the foundation. So Agile project management values. So this is Agile manifesto that was put together by various software development and IT gurus that you can see their names at the bottom. They had a big gathering and trying to understand, because for many years, a lot of major software projects were, like I mentioned earlier, way over budget, way behind schedule, and ultimately a lot of times the customers didn't like the end product and what they saw. It's either maybe not user friendly or didn't really achieve the function or desired by the customers. So there's a lot of rework, a lot of waste built in. So they're trying to figure out how do we do this better, and that's kind of the foundation where Agile became official movement in 2001 when the Agile Manifesto was written. And through these 4 values, being individuals and interactions over process and tools. And one thing that sticks out to me there is we're talking about engineering and design, either being, software development is also engineering, but any kind of other complex work such as engineering and design, we're a mix between art and science. So in that kind of environment, it's very complex, interdisciplinary. Individuals and interactions is more valuable and more important than process and tools. So that's what this chart demonstrates. Not to say that process and tools are not important, just trying to say that our focus and kind of emphasis should be and energy more put towards individuals and interactions. The second one, working software or comprehensive documentation, trying to demonstrate that working product is more important than comprehensive documentation. It might not be perfect, thinking again 80-20, but I'll tell you, while I was working on operations side of business, I would take working facility that has majority of functionality that I desired, and few critical documents, I would take that over any day versus thousands of pages of comprehensive documentation that somebody generated and facility that's not working and it's not doing what it's supposed to do. So that's kind of the value they're trying to embody through this second one. Third one, customer collaboration over contract negotiation is, as we're again looking back at the first one, individual interaction over process and tools, it's much better with our partners or contractors to focus on collaboration, win-win solutions and problem solving together and thinking long-term strategic partnerships versus a lot of times today we get bogged down in penny pinching and negotiating contracts, the details, the terms and conditions, and we kind of could forget a big picture here. That's sort of the way I take the meaning out of the third one. And the last one, responding to change over following a plan. As I mentioned, in traditional environment, we could, project manager and the customer being, let's say, operations team of the facility, could be in adverse relationship from the beginning because project manager wants to lock in the scope, don't want to make any changes, and those scope changes are seen as bad things, if you will, because then we cannot predict everything to detail, how much this is going to cost and how long is it going to take. So it creates kind of adverse relationship. And in an agile environment, we want to be open-minded, understanding, putting ourselves in their shoes and trying to understand what is the most valuable, and let's adjust the design. And if needed, even later during the engineering and design, if that means it's the right thing to do, and the customer said that's the right thing to do, that's actually what they want, and yes, we'll spend a little bit more money to give them the right product ultimately, and we'll overall pay less than them telling us that during the construction and not accepting the facility, having huge delays and cost impact. So that's kind of my summary. And Greg, do you want to add anything to this?
I just, if I was to even summarize it even further, I think what I really see here is I see a real customer focus. It talks about working software over comprehensive documentation. Are we giving the customer a product that really, meets their expectations and their needs? We see the people, the focus on people and collaboration, and we see that that flexibility that we've been talking about. Those are, these principles I think really do embody the agile system, but it's people-centric. It's really getting a lot of collaboration going. It's making sure we're meeting customer expectations and being very flexible and responding to what we're learning along the way.
Exactly. We still need a little bit of things on the right-hand side, but things on the left are more important. So that's the emphasis, and even with the font, I think they try to demonstrate that. So in addition to 4 values, there's 12 principles, and we chose in this slide to kind of summarize that. I think Greg pretty much already did it for us with the focus on customer value, iterative incremental delivery, experimentation and adaptation, cross-functional self-organization, and continuous improvement. So in the Agile world, there's many frameworks or methodologies, they're called, where Scrum has been the most popular and widely accepted. I think I've seen some of the reports and surveys that over 60% of organizations that are adopting Agile are choosing primarily Scrum framework, and then maybe adapting a little bit or tweaking into their own environment, but primarily. So we'll focus in the remaining of the slides on the Scrum framework for you guys. So somebody brought up the question around Scrum. What is Scrum? And trying to kind of explain that, I chose this picture. Scrum is a term that comes from rugby, and I think is purposely chosen because this formation speaks a lot. And as you know, picture is 1,000 words. So if we had a way to communicate here, I would like to ask you, what are your what do you see out of this picture, or what do you see in this picture? I'm curious if anybody would like to share, and then I'll share what actually it means, or embodies. I'm curious if, without me explaining, if anybody will maybe use some verbs to describe what they're seeing here.
Hello, this is Anthony. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah, go ahead, Anthony.
The first thing that comes to mind is everybody relies on each other. That's what that's what I see. Everyone's hands are pressed up against each other, and there's an equal and opposite force, if you will. So there's dependability, and there's someone is lifting up another person, and they're counting on the next person to do the same thing.
Excellent. Anybody else?
There's a guy on the left-hand side who doesn't seem to be leaning on the team, but he's there for backup.
All right. Excellent. Interesting. Any other observations?
There's a look of determination as to whatever they're doing or wherever they're going. I wouldn't want to be in front of them.
Excellent observation. Anything else?
They're focused.
Oh yes, definitely focused.
I would say it's a group of strong individuals that form one strong unit to move forward.
Exactly. Beautiful. Any other? Okay. All right. Yeah, those are all exactly the things that the Scrum is trying to embody with its name. It's a team that's closely working together and collaborating, communicating, helping each other, sharing knowledge, being focused on the same goal that's in front of them. And as you can see, they're very agile and ready to adjust and be able to tackle any obstacles that might show up in front of them so they can reach their goal that's on the other side of the field. So that's what the term means, and the analogy that's behind the Scrum name. That's very, very agile, if you will. So there we go. Anything else, Greg, to add?
No, that was great.
Cool. Okay. So Scrum methodology is a holistic approach for use by a cross-functional team collaborating to develop a new product. It defines product features as deliverables and prioritizes them by their perceived highest value to the customer in the format of user story, which I started the slides with the example from you guys. And we'll see the breakdown of that in a little bit later here. So we reevaluate priorities after each iteration, which is sprint in Scrum, to produce fully functional features, something that we can, if the, let's say, if the project lost its budget or it was canceled, it's still something that we could use in other areas of the business, or we could apply to something else. We have some valuable knowledge, like Greg was saying, that we can use. So it's still valuable, even though it might not become a fully developed product. It's still valuable, and that's kind of what we try to shoot when we break project into those small chunks and user stories. So each iteration has 4 phases: analysis, design, build, and test. So instead of having those long cycles where we try to do everything in detail, we bring those 4 phases in small little chunks and essentially have a small little mini projects, many of them throughout one big project, if you will. So we have example of the Cambridge engineering video that Greg wanted us to share with everyone. Let's see if that's gonna work.
And it's, I hope it does come through. It's what you'll see, some engineers talking with passion about this process, because I've had the opportunity to spend time with this group and with these engineers. And when they talk about it, they really get excited, and so it comes through in this video as well. You'll see that, but it's pretty powerful. And I've watched them go through their Scrum. I've watched them have their meetings, and it's just completely kind of just invigorated their whole engineering department, and hopefully that comes through in this video.
Which has a very great history with 2-second lean individual, it built a culture of continuous improvement. And we were always searching of how do we unlock our teams? What we found was Scrum was the tool that actually unlocked and unleashed our teams. All right, on the agenda, retrospective. I would say before it was very stressful. Never sure what the highest priority is. We were just tackling the most urgent thing, not necessarily the most important thing. There was a lot of struggle there because you didn't feel like you got to complete things and do things of value. It was our owner actually that first read the Scrum book and saw its potential. So we started off with Scrum in an engineering project. You looked at what we were doing maybe 5 or 6 years ago. It would take us from maybe about 5 years from concept to launch of a new product series. And what we've seen now is we're actually able to shorten that up into a year time frame. We worked as a team and we started talking to each other, started cross-training more, so we could tackle bigger tasks together. We weren't reliant on one person for a certain type of issue. We could each do different types of issues now. We now have this ability to look at everything that we're doing and understand the trade-offs. We've got longer-term project planning, we've got weekly project planning, and then we even have daily planning. So on a day-to-day basis, our teams are always collaborating, working on projects, working within the team, also working with customers to make sure that what we're delivering is what our customers, internal or external, needed. And then we have daily stand-ups that are collaborating together to make sure that we are making progress every day. And really, if we're ever we have any impediments or roadblocks, that we're elevating those quickly, addressing those quickly, and then being able to continue moving forward. You see all these whiteboards everywhere with sticky notes. We joke around that we're invested in 3M because we use so many Post-its. And a big part of that is just creating the transparency that we're showing everything that we're working on. You have a list, everyone can see what's on the list, and they can see what we're working on and how their item compares to what everything else is working on. To fix a problem, you have to first make it seen. So just having these everywhere, having boards all across our work environment helps us see those things. I'll figure out which one needs to be the priority. But I imagine it's probably going to be what I love most about Scrum is just it makes work fun. We're able to celebrate. It makes work competitive. It makes it like a game. How has it changed? I enjoy work now. It's very nice having a goal and being able to reach it, coming together to create something that's awesome, and teams coming together to have fun. We used it in several other areas, a big IT project rollout, and now it is spread throughout the rest of the company, everything from safety to quality to on-time delivery. You think about what life was like before, we never really knew whether we were winning or losing. Now we can know it on a weekly and a daily basis. So it just makes work a lot more fun and allows us to deliver more value, which is ultimately what we're trying to serve our company and our customers.
Go ahead, Greg. Give us you say you're working with them?
Yeah, so I am not advising them on their Scrum process. I'm actually working with the senior leaders, with the CEO and the president on the overall company culture and their continuous improvement process and so forth. But I've interacted with these engineers on a few occasions just to watch their process and talk to them about how it's working for them and observing them, doing the scrums. And, when they talk about kind of at the end, the engineer that was talking about, work is fun now. And we know whether we're winning or losing, and it's all out there. It's very transparent, and we're focused on the customer, and we're also focused on our company success. But it's a very fulfilling environment. So it's fantastic. I just love hearing people talk about having fun at work. I love hearing them talk about it's the satisfaction they get out of it rather than the frustration. And it was interesting. One of the engineers there told me that I actually look forward to Monday mornings, and he said, I'm kind of bummed out on Friday. It's like, oh, the week's over. I can't wait for Monday again. And he was serious. He really loves the work because they know what's expected of them. They're they have a great process for knowing that they're going to meet their objectives, and they're learning a lot along the way. And there's a lot of just a whole lot of interaction, a whole lot of collaboration, a whole lot of teamwork. And so it fits in with the whole culture that we're trying to build there at Cambridge Engineering. But I thought this was a really good example for this group to hear about, because you're seeing a real life example of a company that went from traditional project management, it was taking about 5 years to develop a new product, to where using this process, they're doing it in a year or less. And not only that, but they're feeling really good about the process, and they're just getting a lot of fulfillment from the work itself. So I thought that was just a really good example for this group to see.
It sounds like they also had top-down support, so that there's tremendous support.
Absolutely. Yeah, the president of the company attends a lot of the Scrum meetings, and he's just extraordinarily supportive. But he's a pretty unique leader too. He's pretty amazing. But yeah, he's definitely very supportive of the culture, and also of this whole Scrum process, of the whole Agile process.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing this
Sure.
example with us, and definitely helps everybody grow together.
Yeah.
So here is the Scrum framework in a synopsis. Where on the left-hand side you can see a prioritized feature, a log, or backlog, it's also called. This is where you would put user stories in and prioritize them in their value. And the product owner is the person that's kind of in charge of that. Then that's broken down into selected features for the sprint itself that we want to execute during the sprint. This is a slide from a book. It says 3 to 4 weeks, but it could be anywhere from 1 to 4 weeks. Typically, preference is to a shorter time frame where we can still have something that's shippable or that's of value, a small piece of project that's of value that can stand on its own. Ideally, sometimes that's not feasible or possible, but that's the goal, to try to break things down in such a fashion. And as we go through the sprint, this is more from the software development application with building, testing, analyzing, designing circle, but you get the sense of trying to validate that it's working and have all the stakeholders involved in the iteration. Throughout that, there's daily Scrum meetings going on, where we're either in front of the physical board or a digital board. The team is collaborating. The best is face-to-face, definitely collaboration and communication, but some organizations have remote teams, so that's not feasible always for them, so they'll use one of the online solutions for building the Scrum board. At the end of that period, time box, the sprint, we have a sprint review where the functionality is being demonstrated to customers and any feedback is obtained at that time. And then customers leave, other stakeholders leave, and team does the retrospective or reflection by themselves to try to understand how did we do in this sprint, what can we do better to improve, what did we learn from each other, is there anything that we want to adjust so we can continuously improve going forward.
Yeah, even the middle block that you guys are describing for sprint reminds me a lot of the Plan, Do, Study, Act Deming-Schuhart model for continuous process improvement.
Yes, exactly. It mimics basically that. It mimics Plan, Do, Check, Act. Yep.
Yep.
So here are some of the roles as part of the Scrum. So we have product owner that basically acts on behalf of customer or end user to represent their interest and prioritize product backlog. So essentially sets the direction for the team and then empowers team to get there and figure out how to get there. The team itself building the tasks for the sprint, and then development team is cross-functional team, 5 to 9 people, ideally to be most effective with collaboration, with all the skills necessary to deliver the product. So it could be in the software development team, but in other areas it could be electrical designers, engineers, mechanical, civil, structural, kind of collaborating together to build the product, facility, or something else from different industries. Scrum Master is a person that doesn't have a formal authority over the team, development team. It's a person that facilitates Scrum process and resolves impediments at team and organizational level by acting as a buffer between the team and outside interference. So Scrum takes the focus very, very seriously, and distractions coming from the outside, from different departments, are not really welcome, because it takes team their focus away from what they're working on. So Scrum Master is there to kind of gauge that, and in addition to the product owner, to be that interface with other influence. So if something needs to be adjusted, they could, product owner can adjust the backlog if there is input or feedback. But typically, once tasks are set up for the sprint itself, for that short duration, most of the time, ideally by the book, we're not to change that. But there's always exceptional circumstances. Ideally, we say, okay, you have this input, this feedback. How can we incorporate that in the product backlog, and where does that fall in priority with all the other things we have going on, and then handle it accordingly. And I put here, that product owner could be somebody as a project manager from a traditional world, just with very different mindset approaching it, more from a very different than most, I would say, project managers would approach it, not being a boss type of mindset, but more people-centric servant leader mindset. Could be somebody that transitioned to product owner role that would be prioritizing backlog, which is scope essentially in the agile world. And then, on top of that, manage the schedule, overall schedule, and the budget as key responsibilities of a project manager. So this one shows the key steps, which we already covered a little bit, but I'll elaborate on this. And the picture at the bottom, you can see from Agile Foundations workshop that I facilitated. Was also education director from PMI chapter here at Central Valley. So those are pictures from the workshop. But you have a release planning, which is more of a longer term type of plan, where it's very high level, it's kind of like a roadmap, if you will. That gets built with user stories, so at the very high level. And then with sprint planning, we get to break down, pick, let's say, 1 or 2 user stories, their highest value, highest priority, and we break it down into tasks at the sprint level. And team builds that themselves and assign the durations that they believe it's gonna take to deliver those. We have daily scrums, every day, asking 3 questions. Each person goes through it, so there's not one person that tells others what they're going to do. They know their work, and once they understand the expectation and the outcome, being a user story, they know their technicality and the side of what they're expert in. So they put the tasks together to get there and put according duration. And then during this daily huddles, each person would go through where they at with their tasks. Typically it's like from to do, doing, swim lanes, to be verified and done. I like to use to be verified swim lane just to confirm something, to minimize chance of misunderstanding, miscommunication. And any constraints or roadblocks, pretty much are the 3 key questions each person on the team goes through to essentially share with other team members where they at, what they're working on, so people can identify any potential interdependencies, any potential conflicts or constraints that people can help each other without moving forward much longer. We minimize rework that way. So it's not, the purpose of the meeting is not to update project manager like in traditional. Its purpose is for team to share knowledge between each other and build, essentially grow the knowledge base from the team. And that way it's even somebody goes on vacation or gets sick, most of the work can still get done. It's not highly dependent on one person, which we would typically see a lot happening in the traditional approach. And then we have sprint review meetings, which that's where we share what's been completed, the feature, during the interaction with customers and stakeholders, and then the retrospective, as I spoke earlier about, where then customers and stakeholders leave and team itself does a retrospective on the sprint to see how did it do, what can we do to improve, and things like that. Anything else to add here, Greg?
Nope, I think it was a good review. Thank you.
All right. So here is the template, if you will, for user stories that will go in that product backlog at the very beginning. And that's the format that I use as a couple of the examples from the questions that we had from you guys, if you recall. So you can shortly summarize the story at the very beginning and then start with S, what is your role in the organization, on the team, being a customer, stakeholder, management. What is it that you want? What is it that you need? What is it that you care about? What's most important to you, so that we could realize some benefit and get some value out of it. So we can collect this from all the stakeholders, customers, and prioritize that to make sure we deliver the maximum value in the end. And so this is a very powerful way of breaking the scope down, if you will, versus in traditional you would get list a bunch of different requirements. They're very detailedly explained in a very different format, and where you most of the time wouldn't understand the priorities or value between them. That's kind of really hard to assess. So this allows you to do that. And we could, see there's prioritize and size. So for size, typically user story points are being used for relative size comparison in the product backlog. So not necessarily putting a time frame to develop or build this user story and develop the functionality, but to help the team assess the relative comparison. Is this relatively small, which it takes into account the complexity, the size, the risks they might run into, so multiple factors. But as a team together, they put their own estimate in comparison to the others, and that helps them build the overall roadmap, if you will, at a high level. And as they go through the sprints, we'll see there's velocity measures to allow the team to predict to some degree of certainty when the all scope should be completed based on how fast are they moving through the sprints. So here is an example that we wanted to use. So there's a partial product backlog of different products the team was building. Customer information, assurance information, you can see their priorities from 1 to 5. Status, where they at, their estimated hours and actual hours that team has worked on these. So this could be one of the dashboard examples in this format that somebody was asking about. This could be one of the information on that. It's part of a dashboard that's being looked at for this the Scrum.
Any questions from anybody on what we've covered so far?
Yes.
Christy, the dashboard that you're looking for, what kind of status are you trying to provide, or what kind of information do you want to see?
The type of dashboard that I was thinking of more was one that was real time, so that it could be accessible at any time for either the customer or, in my industry, for the public or for upper management to view. That's what I was looking for specifically.
So there are various online solutions and cloud-based, if you will. For example, Trello is the one that I like to use. They has swim lanes that you can build for the Scrum process. There's different power-ups that allow you to have different visualizations that are connected to it that anybody has access can see it's mobile friendly as well. Excel sometimes is hard to access, but this kind of information could be also on a visual physical board, or in there's various platforms online that you can use to make information visible.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we can go next one. So here's another example for sprint backlog. It's partially completed. It shows where things are in progress, are they tested. So it's another way to look at that. Actual hours, remaining hours, that could be used to build a burn down chart to show us how we're doing with completion and estimated what's remaining. Okay. So here's the sprint burn down chart, as I mentioned earlier. So we start with the effort in the beginning with all the tasks the team estimates how long are they going to take to do in one sprint. So try to build them in small increments as much as possible. Those are easier typically to estimate. And then in this case, we have 28 remaining effort total hours for the team. This is in days, but it's built up from the hours, I'm sure. And as we go through the sprint, we mark essentially where we at to track versus the estimate. So the ideal line is obviously the straight line. And as we go, we can see are we behind schedule, ahead of schedule, depending where we are on this in relation to ideal line. And one of the things from a lean background that could be added to enhance this kind of chart is to put green and red. For example, if you're ahead of schedule at the bottom side, you're in green, and red if you're behind schedule. So it's more emphasized even more visually for people to connect, as most people are visual learners. Anything else to add, Greg? Any questions?
I built just a little bit on, you mentioned that, if we had green on one side and red on the other, we referred to those as winning and losing charts. And, that was referenced in the engineer's comments from Cambridge Engineering. He talked about, we didn't used to know whether we were winning or losing on any given day. Now we know every single day whether we're winning or losing. And whenever we can kind of build our charts to be very visual that way, and it's very clear just at a glance whether you're winning or losing, that's very powerful for the workers. Well, and for leadership.
Definitely.
Greg, out at Bell Ridge, the dashboards that they had, the visual dashboards that were electronic, that were everywhere, what kind of information were those describing? Was that
Yeah, it depends on the process. Some of the processes, like for instance, the drilling where you're drilling oil wells. So the drilling department, they had a TV screen dashboard, and on that dashboard you could see the status of every single drilling project, whether it's ahead of schedule, behind schedule, exactly what the location of that drilling rig was, what's the next step in the process, and is the equipment ready for that step. And so you're always a step ahead of where you need to be, and making sure that there's no delays in the process. And it was very visual too, a lot of red, yellow, green indicators, and it was at a glance, you could understand the status of a very complex process. And so that was the drilling department. And then, you might go to another department where they're looking at production, and you could see it by well, or what they call by pattern, a group of wells, or in a particular field, you could see the performance against expectations in very real time, and, what is this particular well producing at this moment? And flags come up if it's behind, so that you can look at, why is it behind? Let's get ahead of it. Let's fix it before it, actually shuts down, and do more predictive and preventative type work, and to keep production at its highest rate. So it depends on which part of the process you're looking at, but they kept a lot of information up there, very visible, and a lot of it wasn't virtual, like on TV screens. A lot of it was on whiteboards, but it was, again, very visual, complete transparency, and everyone knew exactly what the status of the process was just by a quick glance at the board or at the TV screen. So you adapt whatever the content is to what the needs of the team and the leadership are.
Got it. And then the discussions that they would have at the beginning of every shift. You guys had multiples that would happen in a day because you had multiple shifts you were running.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something I know a lot of people talk about, a once a day type of a wall walk or a presentation. Sometimes, depending on the environment, if you've got multiple shifts going on, you need that information presented to where it's handed off to another team. How does that work?
Yeah. So, and I've done this with multiple companies. The company I'm working with up in Canada and other companies I'm working with across the U.S. These stand-up meetings are really, really important. You have a board, a stand-up board, and you really, the way that I would summarize it is, at the beginning of the shift, you pull the team together, and what you're really doing is, setting yourself up for success today. What do we need to know to be successful today? What are the most important things we need to be working on? What information do we need to have? What communications need to be had? And are there any barriers we need to remove to make sure that we have a successful day today? So it's all about setting the day up for success. And then at the end of the shift, when you come back together, it's what did we learn today that we can apply tomorrow to be more successful tomorrow. So you're reflecting back on the day and seeing, what did we learn, how did it go, and what do we need to do different next time. So it's very powerful to have those, and those are 10, 15-minute stand-up meetings at the most, around a board that has the information on it. And I'll just throw this in. This is it's interesting as far as seeing the status and being very transparent. This is kind of to an extreme, but I had a sensei from Japan that I was learning from. And the way he described it, he said a one-eyed horseman galloping through your area on a horse should be able to tell you the status of your process. So, like I say, that's kind of extreme, but the point is that it should be very clear when you look at a board, what the status of the process is. If it's hard to figure out, then there's the board needs to be improved.
Okay.
Yep.
Hopefully that's helpful.
Definitely. So here's the release burn down chart after 6 sprints. So this is zooming out kind of from a sprint level and looking at the bigger picture across multiple sprints, which is called a release in this case. So you can see basically is project on track overall, and how much work is remaining to be completed versus where we're looking at what we estimated at the beginning.
Yeah, even when you talk about a sprint, what I envision is the difference between running a marathon by having one person run the whole race versus having 10 people run different legs of the race. Is that an analogy or a metaphor that they sometimes use so that it's more optimal? Or
I don't know if I would honestly use that kind of analogy, because my interpretation of that, you still have people running by themselves, just a shorter duration.
Right.
The way I'm seeing it is cross-functional team, so is running together real fast, real focused, in a very purposeful manner, understanding what the highest priority and value work is for them, then taking a quick break, reassessing, looking back, how do we continue down this path, or do we adjust and pivot slightly based on the feedback, and then we continue pushing forward. That's kind of more the analogy that I would use.
Okay. Do you celebrate the end of every sprint?
Yes, exactly. That's the piece kind of forgot to mention, but as part of the reflection piece, there is recognition and celebration of a good progress. Definitely that's highly recommended to do, is people get a sense of appreciation for the hard work they're doing. And some of the ways to recognize people is just simple thank you. It could be putting on the wall transparently their picture with the reason they were recognized. It just depends, but I would really try to understand and get to know people at the individual level to understand what's more kind of meaningful, what drives them, motivates them. Some people don't like to be recognized publicly. Some people just like individual one-on-one way. Some people like a gift card more than others. Some don't like that kind of stuff. Some like a simple thank you note that might be written on the card. So it just depends, as you get to know people at personal level on the team to, adjust your way of recognizing them, I guess.
Okay.
All right. So now we get into the applying Agile to large projects. So Scrum was kind of built for a small teams, small projects. And when it comes to scaling, so as we have a huge project, obviously, 5 to 9 people or so, they cannot handle large projects. So there's been a couple of different methods that are been put out or developed on how do you scale Agile and Scrum across your organization. SAFe is Scaled Agile Framework, and another one is, for example, Scrum of Scrums that's been used, where, as the name says, Scrum of Scrum, you have multiple Scrum teams, and there's interdependence and people that communicate information in between them to make sure everybody stays aligned and interdependencies are communicated. So this kind of has to be highly customized per organization, per environment to make sure it's done effectively. So it doesn't create the feeling in people that we are kind of going back to this command and control type of hierarchy and structure. So I'm still, very, very cautious about the scaling Agile approach, because that could potentially derail and overall the purpose of Agile and what it is to empower people. They're closest to where the work is happening to be able to make adjustments, but there's got to be a way to coordinate and align multiple groups of people, multiple Scrum teams. So just trying to say it has to be done very carefully to be effective. And then staging does require more upfront planning to manage interdependencies of different features to be developed. So some protocols have to be developed, and it's very customized per organization environment to coordinate those efforts. And hub project management structure is potentially one of the approaches that this could be done, where you have a central project management team. There's product manager, where it could be product owner, it's kind of analogous term. And then project manager that would focus more on the budget schedule side, product owner, product manager focusing more on managing product backlog and prioritizing that, being more a representative of a customer. Integration team with team leads, for example, that could be the people that communicate between Scrum teams to make sure work is aligned and moving in the same direction, if you will. And then there's team leads from the feature side and development teams, such as Scrum Masters, for example. They all have to be, in sync at all times. So what are some of the limitations or challenges with Agile? So Agile does have flexible scope, while budget and schedules are fixed. That's a contract with management that we're committing to. Which is hard for management command control cultures. So typically they're used to scope being fixed, and so it's a mindset shift. Its principles of self-organization and close collaboration can be incompatible with corporate cultures. So adopting Agile and bringing it in to organizations never used it before could be a challenge. Definitely requires leadership support to give it a try. I was fortunate in my organization that my manager allowed me to do that and experiment, if you will, as we mentioned earlier, and it was a very successful trial. Its methods appear to work best on small projects that require 5 to 9 dedicated cross-functional team members to complete the work. As we mentioned earlier, that's the ideal environment and case where it's most effective, especially if it's in-person, face-to-face type of team, that the collaboration is most effective and communication is the best face-to-face. It requires active customer involvement and cooperation, and this leads to better results. However, customers might not be available when needed to provide the feedback, especially folks in operations. They have other higher priority things during projects. You know, if they have equipment that's down, for example, impacting operation and production, they're probably going to go there to figure it out versus go to design or drawing review on the new project that's going to be implemented next year, kind of thing. So that's could be a challenge to be aware of. Here's some of the key terms that you can look at that we covered throughout the slides. Any questions on any of them, or many questions so far? I think this is the last one. Next one is some resources that Greg and me put together for you guys that we believe would be valuable. You can look through them at your own time afterwards. But any questions? We're pretty much at the end. Anything else, Greg, to add?
Well, I'm again thank all of you for listening in and giving us the opportunity to share this with you. I hope that's come across that there is a by the book way to do this, but there's also ways to adapt it to fit for your process, for your culture, and take full advantage of the principles without the rigor of implementing the whole agile process, and that if done right, it can really be great for the culture of the company and for the people, and as well as, of course, adding to the success of the projects. So it's a lot of fun. I think that came across in the Cambridge video as well, that it really is fun when you get into this type of environment. You can actually, a project can be a lot of fun to go through with your team. And so I hope that you'll experiment with it. I hope you'll try it. I hope you'll, follow up with any questions that we can help with. And just to comment on the bottom link, the interesting lean resource. There's Paul Akers is the president of a company called FastCap, and Paul wrote a book called 2 Second Lean. Fascinating guy, and he likes capturing improvements in his company on video, and then he puts those videos out there for anyone to look at. And some of them are real simple improvements, and some are, it's fascinating. There's the list of hundreds of videos there. So if you get an opportunity sometime, you're wanting to just spend a little bit of time getting some ideas around improving and your processes, just go in and look at his video list there and take a look at a few of those. I think you'll enjoy those. It's really it's fun. And Paul is just he's a CEO there and just a great guy, and it's a lot of fun. It really comes through in his videos as well.
Yeah. No, sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you. I have just a quick question. In your experience, has Agile project management or Scrum has worked in private and public organizations as well? I work for a public organization. I was wondering if you've had some experience implementing this in a public organization.
Speaking for myself, I have not personally helped a public organization to implement Agile, but I have been to government agencies that have implemented it, and I was going just to see how they did it, and so there are if you're talking about like government agencies, that they are using the Agile process, and so I have seen it successfully applied in that environment.
Yeah, it's a government organization.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, I would say I haven't been part of it myself, but I heard, for example, DMV in California, I believe I've heard is implemented parts of it, and I've seen some improvements actually myself when I went to get the license renewed. and I've heard a couple others in the government too. Typically, I would say it's harder to do because there's much more bureaucracy associated with it, in government versus in private, but it's possible, definitely, yeah, like Greg was saying.
Yeah, I have a small group of, we do capital improvements for a department in the county. And I'm thinking that this would be perfect to get us all on board with collaboration and knowing what each one of us are doing. I think it's doable.
Definitely. And we're happy to help if we can. So there's more questions that you have. For example, you can go on my website, schedule 15-minute free consultation. We can address some additional follow-up questions. I can give you some input and additional feedback. So feel free, definitely do that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Greg, one of the things you talked about and even did also is that that conversation that you have is, what did I do yesterday, when you've got the other people around you that need something that needs to get done. Even in a traditional project management environment, I thought it was always important to do a stand-up, 15 minutes at the most. Let's walk through what are the things that everybody needs to get done today. Here's the plan. And what help do you need? Because a lot of times there were constraints that people didn't realize until they were standing next to somebody that says, and I need somebody from your organization here at 2 o'clock to buy this off, or to, there's some level of interaction, and that ability to have that conversation, that face to face in an open and honest environment, I think is really, really important. I think,
Yep. Absolutely. And if you can have that in a tiered structure where you have the shop floor having the first meeting is followed up by, say, all of the supervisors, which is then followed up by a management meeting, and you have an opportunity to escalate things up the chain of command, if you will, every day, and you can escalate problems, roadblocks, ideas that need approval, things like that. That tiered structure for those daily meetings is really powerful as well. And typically, what I have done is when I go into a company, that's one of the ultimate objectives, is to make sure we have that tiered structure starting from the front line all the way up to the CEO on a daily basis.
Okay. Let me ask both of you kind of like a going away question from my part, and then I want to open it up for everybody else. I want to make sure everybody gets a chance to ask you any questions they've got. But if there was one thing that you thought that everybody here could do, just one thing to start down that path of either agile or lean, what is it that they could go into work tomorrow and start to do that you think might make a difference? And I'm not looking for a huge program. I'm looking for one key thing that they could start with.
Okay, I'll go first, I guess. And, I'm going to keep it really simple. Start with what frustrates you, or if I was thinking about it for myself, what frustrates me about my job, and make a list of those things that kind of frustrate me, or it makes work more difficult than it should be, and have a short list, and each day working on eliminating one of those frustrations.
Okay, thank you, Greg. Even?
Absolutely, yeah, I agree with him. Because we want to start with the gap. What is the gap? What are the things that you are seeing in your organization that you think could be done differently? And who are the people you can share this with, that has the authority or power, if you don't have it yourself, that can do something about it. So, not a lot of organizations don't have like systematic daily improvement processes and anything like that has a mechanism for people to share their ideas. But try to find those people and share some of this, this information and some of the stuff from the additional resources to get their thought process and thinking in this direction, to inspire them to open up their minds and see, can we do our projects a little bit differently? Can we try? What kind of project is a good candidate that's a low risk that we could try something different and see and assess how does it work? Does it improve how we manage project? Are we getting things done a little bit faster? Is it more effective? I would say that's what comes to my mind. And the Scrum guide is really short guide that it's a really good one to share. If somebody's never heard of Agile, doesn't know anything about Scrum, it's a really good starting point to get them exposed to it without spending, enormous amount of time of reading or things like that.
Got it. And I've gone ahead and put everybody's picture up, so you should be able to see everybody. If you're there, you can see who all's here. So if you've got a question, now's the time. I want you to ask these guys any questions you've got, whether it's related to school, whether it's related to your work environment, something that you can walk away from. I want you to walk away with a golden nugget tonight. These are the guys that have got them. Jose, come on. I'm gonna call you all out. Any questions?
No question, comment. I mean, we do have so many tools. I mean, we do have Agile now. I first time that I hear about that. We do have Lean, Six Sigma. To mention, I mean, we continue to have more tools, and that's good. I mean, we do have options, right, to select what can work in each facility. But there's a lot of tools out there. We need to see how that fit in each of per site, and of course, I mean, most of these in the private industry are deployed from top to bottom. I mean, they have the management have a vision, right? And those are the ones who decide what tools are the ones that are going to be used in each facility. So I've been using, I use Lean, Six Sigma, to mention the most common ones, but we do have some internal tools. I mean, the dashboards, the boards on each of the hallways to monitor and cost. We monitor costs and we monitor, performance. We do have KPIs. So again, it's another tool that first time that I hear about it. So thank you.
Definitely.
Got it. I know that in the 70s we started with quality circles, and then from there it was TQM, and then from there it was, this rolling wave of quality initiatives, and at a certain point it became what's the flavor of the month, and it kind of got rolled out. I think the big difference would be if you've got a top-down management structure that kind of takes it and runs with it and rolls it down in addition to allowing it to work its way at that localized level. So I think you've got to have top-down support for whatever you're doing, or else you'll get stepped on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what context? For example, are you working in the operation side of the business?
For Jose?
Sorry, you asked me? Yes, maintenance. Yeah, other tools that come out to me, for example, RCM.
Mm-hmm.
A predictive, related with FMAA and all that kind of stuff. So in chemical plant, we used to work with HACCP, to work with the project. So
yeah, so it just depends on the environment. Scrum is more suited for a project type of new capital projects environment. For example, Kanban is a different way of
right.
doing it, and it's more suitable for operational type of applications. It's another approach that's also very lean. There's a lot of overlap between these different approaches, but don't get bogged down on that. It's more around the mindset, how to eliminate the waste and make the process as effective and efficient for your own application. So it's not like, hey, Scrum is going to be great in all environment for all applications and contexts. It's not necessarily. Really got to think about what's the context.
And even on, we do have a project management office, that use, of course, the regular cascade traditional method to deal with projects. So that I see that is changing. And on the project management office, we do have like a specialized software to monitor the lessons learned and how to deal with the project itself. So, yeah.
Okay, well, that concludes the formalized presentation. We're going to hang out here in case you've got any questions you want to ask. The course lecture for tonight is over. Thank you all for participating. I want to put a big shout out and thank you to Greg and to even I owe you guys big time for this. This has been really special and we really appreciate it. So if you guys will just hang on while we let people leave, anybody that's left that's got any questions, feel free to jump in here.
Yeah, I would just like to say thank you before some of the people go off. I really appreciate this opportunity, and it's been a pleasure sharing knowledge with all of you. And hopefully, some of you give it a try if there's a good compatibility with the environment that you're in. And feel free to reach out to us, like I said before. So thank you again for your time.
Thank you.
Have a great week, guys.
Thank you. See you next week.
You got it.
Thank you and good night.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you. Good night.
I have one last question.
Go for it, Cesar.
On average, how long does it take to implement, these different program management style in an organization?
What kind of context? Give us a little more information. What kind of environment you're talking about? What type of work? What kind of industry? Give us a little more.
Yeah. So I'm in a public agency. I work for the LA County Department of Beaches and Harbors. We manage. I'm in the planning division, and in the planning division, we have about 10 people. 5 of us work on capital projects. 5 work on planning environmental issues, and we're right now we're kind of working in silos. I manage the capital project section, and then we have another person who manages the environmental planning section. But even within my section, some of our project managers are not collaborative, if you will, and it seems like they want to keep the projects to themselves without putting out any information or sharing any information with anybody else. Well, I've been trying to change that in trying to get them to collaborate because we get ideas from various people. I think it's doable because we're a small group. I just don't know what kind of resources I will need and how long that will take. I know that my administration will be very supportive, but I'd like to know more about what exactly I would need to start implementing it and getting it going.
Okay, so sounds like the environment is supportive of you experimenting, giving it a try, and it's in a small enough environment. The only piece else that I think is important is how much of a control do you have over how the work gets done versus somebody above you telling you guys how exactly to do the work.
Yeah, no, I have a lot of flexibility of how we manage our projects. Obviously, the director has a priority of the different projects that we have, but as far as how we manage each one of those projects, I think I have a lot of flexibility.
Okay, so this is a long-term evolving type of process. It's not like overnight you can do this, but you can break it down in small chunks. So first starts with education. So exposing people to be aware that there is a different way of doing things, and kind of seeing their reaction. So for example, the Scrum guide could be, hey, this is a 20-something page document that's really succinct, to the point. Can you guys take a look at that, see what you think, compare, contrast with how we do manage projects today? And do you see this as a interesting, make it very open-ended, maybe informal kind of get-together to discuss people's thoughts, reflect on it, see what they think, and just see what piece can you try from it. Do you want to start with just daily huddles, adjust how you plan the work together more collaboratively, and just do it in bits and pieces? So to mature, it takes several years, as Greg mentioned. With Cambridge Engineering, this thing doesn't happen overnight, but we can try it, in small bites and pieces. So I would say,
Cesar, you may have a an agile guru somewhere in the organization that you just don't know about. And if you can find that resource or that person, they can leverage resources over to you, whether those are, internal people that could possibly help support you. I know the other guys have got books that they put out there. This is one, it's an agile practice guide that we use sometimes in different things. It's sponsored by PMI. It's got a basic tutorial for agile, and you might be able to use something like this to give yourself at least that flavor of where you want to start. But the other thing is these guys don't know that you get to watch the sun go down every night at the beach. I mean, that's so. I mean, he's got the best job in the world. He's.
I hate the afternoon sometimes. It really bothers my eyes.
he gets to watch the sun go down at the beach every day. He's at the harbor. I mean, it's like, oh my, this is like he's already got the best job in the world. Now we're going to make it even more fun for him. So yeah,
Yeah, another thing, Cesar, you can think about is just, sometimes depending on the culture, I don't know what the culture is there or what the, in general, the behaviors are of the other colleagues that you have to collaborate with. But sometimes it's helpful just to start small and just pick something, say let's try something. Let's be very transparent about the status of our project, and let's meet maybe Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and just talk about what's important on Mondays, what's important for us to work on this week, and let's put some stickies up on the board, and we'll check back on Wednesday and see how it's going, and then on Friday we'll look back on the week and look forward to the next week, and just spend 15 minutes 3 times a week, just kind of getting everyone on board, getting everyone leveled with what's going on across the projects, and maybe what you need from each other, and how you can help each other. And that starts to build the behaviors. That starts to demonstrate the value of doing that. And sometimes it takes a small step like that, and letting people practice with it and experience it a little bit before they're ready to, take it to the next level. So you may want to start really small with something like that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you could call it a pilot, communication pilot. What Greg just described there gives you the ability to kind of, do a gap analysis after 3 months and say, in the last 3 months, what we've been doing is something similar to what, Greg just talked about. Have we seen an increase in collaboration? Have we increased communication? Are we starting to catch problems faster because we see them up front? There's a variety of dashboards you could start to create, or metrics to measure.
And another thing I could offer is potentially we could set up Agile Foundations workshops. So hands-on, they could try and experience the Scrum approach, and then make a better assessment, because hands-on is much better way for people to connect and learn and see, hey, is this something that would stick with me? Is this something I could see myself doing or not? Versus theoretical is kind of harder to make that connection and assessment.
Okay.
Yeah, almost every employee survey that every company I've worked with has gotten always gets flagged for one area, and that's communication. That no matter how open we are, no matter how much we communicate, everybody always wants more communication. So anything you can do to improve that within your organization, doesn't matter what you call it, You can call it something informal. You don't have to use the word agile or lean or any of that for right now. And then you can come back later and say, oh, well, what we did was we piloted this, you know, and that might be, that way you don't scare people off up front.
Right. Well, this is very valuable. I really want to get it started as soon as tomorrow, actually, because I have a section head meeting tomorrow, and I want to mention that to the group. So thank you very much.
Those three questions that Greg talked about and that Even talked about, if everyone standing there will share those three things and you put it on sticky notes, you're starting down a path that's going to be really positive.
All right, we'll do.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Have a good
Have
night.
a great one, Cesar.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.